This is what they were running out there.
Vice President Harris came and visited my restaurant.
We've all been through moments when we question the course our country is on, and let's be honest, the Democratic National Convention's DNC recent performances, well, they've given us plenty to talk about. From their attempts at rebranding to the way they handled leadership, let's dive into the chaos and break it all down.
Well, the big movers and shakers of the Democratic Party must know her well.
She worked at McDonald's, and she greeted every person with that 1,000-watt smile and said, "How can I help you?"
You might want to stay till the end. This one's about to get real. It's not every day that a vice president strolls into your establishment, but when Vice President Kamala Harris made an appearance at my restaurant, it wasn't just a visit. It felt like an attempt at trying to force something relatable. The cameras flashed, the crowd cheered, but honestly, that was just a show. What came next was even more telling of her political brand.
Of course, an important part of tonight was familiarizing people with the Democratic nominee's biography, a hallowed walk through the trials and tribulations that formed the ethos and spirit of the Democratic nominee.
Nothing substantial. Sure, she had a smile and a good greeting, but is that really enough to inspire trust? At this point, the question on everyone's mind was, is this the best we've got? When you think about it, Kamala's tenure as vice president hasn't exactly been a shining beacon of leadership. It feels like every time the spotlight was on her, the performance was lackluster, no groundbreaking policy, no bold decisions, and certainly no clear leadership that could justify the hype. So when it was time to package her image, the DNC went with a restaurant visit, a vanishing act whenever things got tough. The lack of real substance was glaring. It wasn't just about the title, it was about the missed opportunities that could have made a mark.
Up until tonight, they didn't have a lot. Thin on the anecdotes, quite frankly.
No major accomplishments, no standout leadership moments, just a hollow.
Let's break it down. The DNC had 4 years to build a compelling case, 4 years to craft a narrative that would make Kamala stand out as a leader. But what did they do? They scrambled at the last minute. The resulting product was something that just couldn't stand the test of scrutiny. When Jon Stewart torched them, it wasn't just for bad decisions, it was for the lack of any coherent strategy. 4 weeks? That's plenty of time if the groundwork had been laid, but instead we got empty slogans and the hope that identity alone would carry the weight.
My phone rings. It's Kamala Harris. She called me.
My phone rang again, and it was Vice President Kamala Harris.
If you're lucky enough to be her friend, she calls you on her birthday.
Imagine this, a campaign that expects voters to just accept things at face value. The DNC had no clear message, no bold claims. Instead, it felt like they were trying to sell a product no one wanted to buy. There's no question that Kamala Harris was a product of identity politics, not a proven leader. She was there not because of her record, but because the party thought her identity could bridge some gaps. And when the country needed decisive leadership, the Democrats couldn't deliver. Now it's not like the DNC didn't have the chance to shine. They had everything at their disposal, prime time, a national audience, and an eager public waiting for direction. Yet what did we get? A show, not substance, a series of token gestures, misplaced priorities, and no real action. The DNC's convention felt more like a poorly scripted reality show where everyone was playing a part, but nobody cared about the plot. They missed the chance to offer real solutions, instead delivering performance art with no depth.
She calls you on her birthday? That is very
Yeah, let's go Democrats! You know, the dumber your hat, the more energy you always have.
But it wasn't just the speeches and theatrics that exposed the flaws. It was the details. One major oversight was the DNC's own official platform. Somehow they forgot to update Joe Biden's name and replace it with Kamala Harris's, a mistake that might sound trivial but speaks volumes about the level of preparation or lack thereof. If you can't even update your own party platform, how can we trust you with the country's future? That's not a minor slip. It's a failure of leadership on a grand scale. Then there was the speculation about big-name celebrities making appearances. Beyonce? Taylor Swift? Sure, it's great to have high-profile endorsements, but the DNC seemed to think that star power alone could solve their problems. When real, tangible policy matters were needed, they relied on the fleeting sparkle of celebrity cameos. The message here is clear. No matter how famous your friends are, they can't make up for a lack of substance.
No one ever puts on a donkey hat and is like, you know what, let's stay in tonight. But of course Democrats are excited because this is a chance for them to lay out their specific vision each night. And let's hear what you got.
This morning, we are learning how each night of the convention will highlight her vision for the country. Tomorrow's opening night's theme, For the People. Tuesday will outline Democrats' bold vision for America's future. Wednesday, they're calling a fight for our freedoms.
Speaking of distractions, let's talk about the mainstream media. Instead of challenging the DNC's shaky narrative, they became complicit in the charade. Instead of questioning the inconsistencies, they added fuel to the fire by promoting whatever fit the narrative. Where was the accountability? The role of the press is supposed to be a watchdog, but they acted as little more than cheerleaders. Journalism became just another tool in the political toolbox, contributing to the narrative instead of serving the people's right to the truth. By the time the election finally arrived, the Democratic National Committee was facing a situation that was beyond repair. Their strategy had been a train wreck from the very start. Let's break it down. They had 4 years to prepare for this moment, and yet somehow they fumbled it all. The DNC had an opportunity to build a meaningful platform, to craft a vision that resonated with real issues the American people were facing, but they opted for superficial tactics, hoping that identity politics and flashy appearances would win the day. They weren't wrong in recognizing that America had changed and that diversity needed to be embraced. However, in their haste to do the right thing, they got caught up in performative politics, making decisions not based on merit, but on optics. Now let's look at their candidate, Kamala Harris. The selection of Harris was never about her policy achievements or a record of fighting for working Americans. It was about checking boxes, a woman, a person of color, a so-called progressive voice. But this wasn't a grassroots movement. This wasn't about empowering people who had long been left behind. This was the DNC trying to appease a certain segment of the population by choosing an individual who fit a narrative more than they fit the needs of the country. And that right there was the fatal flaw.
Old policy move by the Democrats. Tuesday is for the future, and Thursday is also for the future. How do you have themes that are so vague and then still run of ideas by Thursday?
For the DNC to throw their weight behind a candidate with so little to show for herself over 4 years in office was a massive gamble, and they lost. You can't sell a vision based on things like slogans or diversity alone. Sure, those things are important, but they're not enough when there's no tangible plan to back them up. The voters saw right through this, and when you have a party that's more concerned with optics than outcomes, people start to lose faith. This failure wasn't just about the lack of policy. It was also about a fundamental disconnect between the Democratic establishment and the average American voter. When you're in a bubble, surrounded by people who share your views and echo your opinions, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that real change doesn't happen through Instagram hashtags or celebrity endorsements. Real change happens when people are able to look at their leaders and see someone who has earned their trust through hard work, through sacrifice, and above all, through results. And the DNC failed to deliver on any of that, but it didn't end there. The chaos at the convention, with endless distractions and no clear vision, highlighted just how far off track the DNC had gone. They missed the opportunity to offer voters a real sense of hope or a concrete path forward. Instead, what we got was a spectacle, a show designed to look good on TV. But in the end, style doesn't win elections, substance does. and the DNC couldn't deliver that substance. It's also worth noting how the media played its role in all of this. In their desperation to present the DNC in the best possible light, they missed the boat on critical analysis. Rather than holding the DNC accountable for their missteps, the media became an extension of the campaign. Rather than questioning the glaring inconsistencies and failures in the party's messaging, the media fell in line, reinforcing the narrative the DNC wanted to create. And that wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal of their duty as a check on power. When the media becomes complicit in the political process, they lose their credibility, and ultimately, they lose the trust of the very people they are supposed to serve. It's almost as if the DNC had forgotten what it means to be a party of the people, their disconnection from reality, from the struggles that everyday Americans face, was glaring. And when it came time to deliver a candidate who could speak to those struggles, they chose someone who, unfortunately, seemed disconnected from those very people. Voters want authenticity, they want leaders who understand their needs and their fears, and they want to see a clear plan for addressing those concerns. But in the end, what the DNC gave them was nothing more than a polished illusion, a candidate they hoped would resonate based on identity alone. And when it failed, they had no backup, no real ideas, no solid foundation, just empty rhetoric and flashy performances. And that's the DNC's ultimate failure, not the loss of an election, but the loss of the trust of the American people. They couldn't provide the leadership they promised. They couldn't meet the moment. And in doing so, they handed the election to those who had a clear, albeit controversial, message, one that resonated with voters in a way that the DNC's empty promises never could. So when style replaces substance, when optics overshadow outcomes, the result is exactly what we saw, a brutal, avoidable defeat.